"I'm paying for it," Diane said, and pushed the form back across her dying sister's bed. Then she walked out of the charity ward in heels that cost more than the surgery, past the 7-year-old asleep in a plastic chair. 19 years later, they wheeled Diane into that same ward, and that little girl was the doctor standing over her bed. They were sisters, though you would never have guessed it. Diane had married into money and wore it like armor. Rose had married for love, lost her husband young, and raised the little girl on a grocery clerk's wages. Rose's heart had been failing for months. The doctors said one operation could fix it, and that without it she had weeks. Her daughter, Emily, was 7. She slept in the hard plastic visitor's chair every night so her mother would never wake up alone. The surgery cost more than Rose could earn in 3 years, so she did the hardest thing she had ever done. She picked up the phone and called her sister. Diane came, but she came the way you visit a place you already planned to forget. She stood at the foot of the bed in her camel coat and did not sit down. "I wouldn't ask," Rose whispered. "If it were only me. But there's Emily. She has no one else in the world." Diane looked at the cracked linoleum and the crowded beds and the other families, and what she felt was not pity. It was embarrassment that this was her blood. "I have a life, Rose," she said. "I can't set fire to it every time you fall behind. You made your choices. I made mine." An older aide named Martha was quietly changing a bed by the window. She had lost her own small clinic to men who did business the way Diane's family did. She said nothing. She only watched, and she remembered. A nurse brought the financial guarantor form. Diane read a single line, drew a slow stroke of the pen through her own name, and handed the clipboard back. Then she walked out. Her heels clicked down the long corridor, past the vending machine, past the little chapel, out through the glass doors into the cold. She did not look back at the girl asleep in the chair. Bar. Lay back and counted the water-stained tiles on the ceiling the way she used to count sheep for Emily, and tried to think of a single other person on earth she could call. That night, against every rule, Martha sat down on the edge of Rose's bed and took her hand. "You are not going to die in here," she said. "Not while I'm on this floor." Martha had once run a small neighborhood clinic. Diane and Thomas's company bought the block, tripled the rent, and let it close. She lost her clinic, her savings, and her good name, and she had been changing beds in this ward ever since. She could not pay for a heart surgery, but she knew every doctor in that building, and she knew which of them still believed. Medicine was a calling. She spent a week knocking on doors for a woman she barely knew. A surgeon finally agreed to do it for nothing. Rose lived. She woke to find a tired old aide asleep in the plastic chair where her daughter usually curled up. Rose had gone looking for family and a rich sister, and found it instead in a woman who owed her nothing at all. The years that followed were not easy, but they were warm. Emily called her Grandma Martha, though they shared no blood. Martha taught the girl to bandage a scraped knee before she taught her to tie her shoes. Diane, meanwhile, climbed, and she did not climb alone. Her husband Thomas had a warm, easy smile that made everyone trust him. The kind of smile people believe right up until it is too late. Together, they bought a chain of private hospitals. The woman who had let her own sister nearly die in a charity ward was photographed cutting ribbons and praised as a champion of care. Diane believed the applause meant she was safe. She never noticed that the loudest clapping came from Thomas, who was already quietly counting what would be left when she was gone. The night they honored her, the ballroom was full of orchids and important people. They handed Diane an award shaped like a pair of cupped hands, and she actually blinked back tears. Then Thomas took the microphone. He thanked everyone for coming, and his smile never wavered as he began to tell the room the truth about his wife. He had kept everything: the refused surgery form, the story of a sister left dying in a charity ward, with a 7-year-old asleep in a chair. He read Rose's name aloud while the cameras rolled. The room that had been clapping a moment before made a sound Diane had never once heard aimed at her. She stood under the lights holding a trophy of cupped hands while 1,000 real ones turned away. She searched the crowd for one friendly face and found Thomas at the back, watching her with that same warm smile from every photograph. Only then did she understand it had always been the smile of a man measuring her for the fall. It was a clean kill. By morning, the board had removed her, and every asset she thought was theirs turned out to be quietly, legally. He had built this exit for years, one smiling signature at a time. Diane tried to tell them what Thomas really was. She tried to explain the setup, the manipulation, the years of it. But he was the man everyone trusted, and she was the woman who had abandoned her own dying sister. The truth about Thomas they buried, the way the truth about charming men so often does. The money went, the friends went, Thomas went too, with a younger woman and a shiny new foundation named after himself. The years after that were a long quiet coming down. Diane sold the jewelry, then the furniture, then the good address. Pride kept her from asking anyone for help, and soon enough there was no one left to ask. 19 years after she crossed out her name on that form, Diane's own heart began to fail. The same weakness that had come for her sister came looking for her. She had no insurance and no money. An ambulance took her to the only place that would have her, the county charity hospital. They wheeled her into a crowded ward under humming fluorescent lights, and the smell of the place stopped her breath. It was the same ward 19 years gone, and it was the same cracked linoleum, the same humming vending machine, the same plastic chairs where a little girl had once slept waiting for a mother she nearly lost. She needed the very operation she had once refused to pay for. And in this hospital, one person held the authority to approve a charity case that expensive, or to turn it down. The office door opened, and the woman who stepped out was older now, silver-haired in a white coat that the whole ward seemed to straighten up for. Diane knew her face before she could remember why. It was Martha, the aide who had once changed beds by that very window. The woman whose clinic Diane and Thomas had crushed to round out a number on a spell. She had gone back to medicine in her 50s and never stopped climbing. Martha looked at the shrunken woman in the bed for a long, quiet moment. She remembered the camel coat. She remembered the pen crossing out a name. She remembered a little girl asleep in a plastic chair. "Please," Diane whispered. And the word felt strange in her mouth, like a language she had always refused to learn. "Please. I have no one. I'll die without it." Martha had heard those words in this room before, from a far better woman. She lifted the clipboard. She read a single line. Then she uncapped the pen and drew a slow, deliberate stroke across the form. The same gesture Diane had made 19 years before. But Diane had crossed out a name to let a woman die. Martha struck out the amount owed, wrote her approval beneath it, and signed her own name where Diane's had once been erased. Full care. Nothing to pay. "You don't remember me," Martha said. "That's all right. I remember enough for both of us. A woman lay in this ward once and taught me what family is supposed to look like. It wasn't you. I've spent 19 years trying to be her instead." Diane understood. Then the aide by the window, the ruined clinic, the sister she had left in this same bed. She opened her mouth to ask about Rose, and something in Martha's face answered before the question could leave her. Rose had lived 19 more years on a surgery a stranger had begged for. She had died 2 winters ago in a warm bed holding her daughter's hand, loved by every person in the room. Diane had not been one of them. The young doctor who came to prepare Diane for surgery had a warm, familiar face. Her badge read, Dr. Emily. She was the girl from the plastic chair, grown up and gone into medicine to save the very kind of people her aunt had once thrown away. A nurse murmured to her who the frightened old woman really was. Emily went very still. Then she took her aunt's hand in both of hers, the way her mother once would have, and said, "You're going to be all right. We've got you." Diane lived. That was the cruelest part of all. She woke in the charity ward alive on the mercy of the 2 people she had worked hardest to erase, and now she had to go on living inside that. She stared at the same water-stained tiles her sister had once counted, and for the first time in her life she understood exactly how much a person can lose in a room like this, and exactly who she had been. She had chased money and a smiling man and a trophy shaped like cupped hands, and she had traded a sister for all of it. None of it stayed. What stayed was her sister's kindness, wearing a niece's face and checking her chart every morning. Diane had always believed you got ahead in this world by cutting people loose in the end. The only ones who never let go of her were the ones she had let go of first. The same pen she once used to cross out a name had come all the way around. This time it wrote her back to life, held in a hand she had spent a lifetime pretending she would never need. If you believe the way we treat the people who need us always finds its way home, subscribe to Comma Tales. The next story is already waiting, and it turns on one line you will not see coming.